They were so excited. The two families, the couples, had gone to school together in high school. They'd even gone to the same colleges. They were been so close for so many years. But after leaving college, one couple went to Massachusetts. And so the years began to pass, and children came along. And you know, you get to the point with people you care about that phone calls, emails, letters, social media just isn't enough. And the day comes when you're really going to make the Massachusetts family visit Southern California. And so the great day arrived, and they were all so excited. They got there fairly early in the day, and as the day went on, the children, pretty much of the same ages, paired off and were having a great time. And as evening approached, you had the adults settling in with a glass of wine or whatever, and just really beginning to catch up after all the years. But one of the children was 3, little Joey. And I don't know how many of you have had children or grandchildren or even nieces and nephews or neighbor kids, but have you ever seen a 3-year-old that's both wired and tired? It's usually not a great combination, right? So here he is. He's been traveling, he's in a strange environment, and this is exactly what's going on with Joey. And of course, when you have a house full of guests, you know, sometimes you have to make kind of on-the-fly sleeping arrangements. And so some of the older kids were off in those rooms and people were moved around. But it came time to put Joey down, and the place they decided to put him was on a sleeping bag on the floor. Okay, again, wired and tired. How long is he going to actually stay on the sleeping bag, right? So up and down, and Joey, you really have to settle down. Really, Mom and Dad are right here, it's gonna be fine. First it was a story from Mom, then it was a story from Dad. And they're trying to get settled in. Well, you know, it's de-escalating a little bit, but he's still not there yet. And she thinks she's finally got him down. She starts to walk away. Mommy, I want a drink. How many of us have heard that one? Any excuse to keep things going on. She gets the water. Joey, you gonna go to sleep now? Yes, Mommy. Love you, Joey. Love you, Mommy. This time, when she left, all was quiet. And all continued to be quiet throughout the evening as adults went to bed and everybody was sleeping. And then at 4:30 in the morning, the Landers earthquake hit. 7.1. Joey's sleeping bag was under the fireplace. And with a loud crash, the chimney let go, came through the interior ceiling, and the two families were faced with a 3-year-old child who was the only fatality of the Landers earthquake. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the problems that I've seen over and over again in my practice as a consultant is people just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of people are unaware of the dangers of chimneys. And so I thought that would be some place that I would jump off from today to kind of bring you into that sphere and look at one of the issues that people do not talk about enough. As a mother, Joey's story broke my heart, still does. That was June 28th, 1992. But there have been others, because I've been in this business so long, I've tracked a number of these. Nathan, under bricks, he survived. It was a touch and go for a while, but they had to split him open from neck to groin, flayed open with plastic wrap over him because his organs were so swollen. And he basically lost the use of one arm because of the crush injuries. 2014, South Napa quake. Took Nicholas about a year to walk again because of the fractures in the hips and legs. All of these have been young people. And most people think that if you have chimneys on the exterior of the house, they're going to fall to the outside. That is not always the case. And it isn't always the case that they let go just at the roof line, especially if you have a multi-story home. This one from the South Napa quake, from a structural engineer that I've worked with, is actually a couch underneath that chimney. What's unusual about the picture is that the bricks didn't separate. Usually the problem is the mortar lets go, and so they kind of scatter. And so you end up with a big, circle or semicircle around the area. And that's something to watch for if you've got chimneys, and thinking about your interior post-shaking evacuation plan. You don't want to be walking right by a chimney on your way out of a building. Now it turns out that unless you have an A-frame like the prior picture, if you have a standard structure with an interior ceiling and a little bit of an attic, turns out that the fix for this that can improve the life safety a bit is just putting in plywood. Plywood's very cheap. This is just a screenshot from one of the big box stores, about $30 a sheet. So basically what you do in the attic is you go in and board across the joists. Now, for those of you who've never been in an attic, if you were to step between those ridged joists, you would actually have your foot and leg go down into the interior part of the building. And so basically you just put thick plywood in there, and that may not completely prevent the problem of interior penetration, but one thing it will do is slow it down. And that could be a critical life safety window. Chimneys also figure into a number of things that I've noticed in inspections over the years. I've got 26 years now that I've been out in the field looking at all kinds of property situations and helping people with their planning. Now, this was just a shot in Glendale that I took when I was on the way to do a residential. It was just a random house that was under construction. But you notice the slim supports on the little porch, and also that the chimney is right there. So these people have a choice of an exit to use after an earthquake, and I would not recommend that they use the front one if the rear or side exits offer more safety. So one of the lessons here is start looking at the places you occupy, workplaces, schools, residences, and so on, and look at what's around the exits. Now, I'm going to say something that's probably going to surprise and maybe not land well with our fire department people, but I would say that one of the things we've got to look for in multi-occupancy buildings and schools is that the fire exit plan is not necessarily the same as the earthquake exit plan, precisely because of the number of hazards that may be around certain exit pathways. And something people need to look at individually based on the design of the property. Now, this was a small rental consult, and I noticed when we were walking the outside, I could see a little caulking up around the roof line, and that made me suspicious. So I walked a little closer, and yeah, there were some places where some divots in the mortar. And I did recommend that they have a an inspection. This is not their chimney, but I've seen chimneys like this that people had that were already significantly damaged, and they didn't even know about it because no one had ever looked. So, really take a good look over your property. Another common problem, a very well-known problem in seismic safety, is the soft story construction, where you have heavy structure over tuck-under parking or garages. Very, very common. The City of Los Angeles now has an ordinance requiring retrofit of multi-occupancy buildings in Los Angeles City within a certain period of time. In this particular case, these are side-by-side comparisons of homes that were fairly similar in design and type, and one had the foundation bolted and the cripple wall reinforced, and one did not. You can see that the one without the brace and bolt did start to slip on the foundation, did start to fail. The one on the right that had been reinforced stood. Now, the statistics are that if your house moves on the foundation, you are facing a minimum loss of 125 grand and probably or possibly the entire complete loss of your home. It depends on how severe it is. In some California earthquakes, houses did not just shift on the foundations, but they actually jumped the foundations by as much as 10 feet. And what I would say to you is, okay, you could be doing financial risk management and have insurance and everything, but if you're in it, that's another problem. And so I would say to you that what we know now is that when you reinforce the cripple walls and bolt the foundation of the older homes that need it, this is an interior, under the house shot kind of graphic, with a vent hole up on the right and a crawl space to the left. But it's the same concept as boarding over in the attic on the chimney. You're basically going to be reinforcing with specific types of hardware for the bolting and plywood panels that are vented to add sheer strength to the home. Now, here's the good news. How many of you have heard of the Brace and Bolt program? Anybody? Okay, some of you have. 9 zip codes in Glendale are opening up in 2018. Get on the list now to be notified so that you can register right away if you need to have this work done. Because if your house is pre-1979 and needs this work, if the slope is not too severe and if the cripple walls are less than 4 feet tall, you can qualify for $3,000 in grant funds toward the work that needs to be done. Now, there are some specifics that you have to comply with, but they even have people that have been specifically trained in this that they can refer you to do the work. Not necessarily recommend them, but they know that they've been through the training and know how to comply with all the safety things. And not only $3,000 in grants, but if your home is retrofitted in these ways, or you do it under this program, you can qualify for up to 20% discounts on your earthquake insurance. And so it's a really good thing. Now, the other thing people miss about this, other than the thought of being in the house when it jumped the foundation, is it's not just the structure and your individual situation that we need to be concerned about. This is a huge community issue. And the reason it is because when they jump the foundations or shift on the foundations, they break the gas lines. And when you're talking about the San Andreas scenario, with all the new science that's out about that, with 2 minutes of shaking, 5 to 6 feet per second, it's going to do a lot of things. And one of the things it's going to do is it's going to pick up the I-15 Cajon Pass and slam it down about 35 to 40 feet to the northwest. About 10 miles of the 10 is going to be pulverized to gravel. You're going to have about 1,800 dead throughout the region. And that's conservative because they expect 5 high-rise collapses. But when the Cajon Pass goes, and a similar effects at the Grapevine, it's going to take away all our imported water, all our electricity, grid power, all our fiber optics communication, and every critical resource that we have, water, power, natural gas. And when they did the latest study, And when they got the silos talking to each other, professional silos talking to each other, they realized that there's also piped motor vehicle and aviation fuel through there, so the fires are going to burn there for 2 to 3 weeks. And one of the lessons, therefore, is that we cannot just prepare for a few days, but we need to be on our own for several weeks. And the fire situation that would start with a house that came off the foundation is serious, because with blocked roads, no water, emergency responders overwhelmed with things to do, fires are going to spread. And prevention and controlling early fires while they're still controllable are very important. Yes, sir?
Is this why you're moving to...
Can you stand and project? I have a little bit of a hearing, actually a severe hearing loss.
This is why you're moving to Spokane.
Honestly, there is a part of that. And I tell everyone that I'm getting out just in time. So I really want to, emphasize that doing these things to your homes, if they need them, can save the entire community. Now, some of the things, this was a home in Glendale, and this hatch, the gas valve for the house, is actually under the house. And one of the things that I've found out over the years is that when Southern California Gas comes around into the communities and their retrofits and they're pulling them out from under the house so that they're more accessible, they put it as close to the original location as possible. So if it's right next to a chimney, too bad. All right. So if you're in one of the older neighborhoods that they're coming around to move them out from, see what you can do to make sure that it's moved to a location that actually is sensible. Because they're very, very hard to get to when they're under there, and also very hard to get to when they're in the street vaults. As a matter of fact, the street vaults tend to fill up with dust and leaves and things and bury the actual valve. And if you go out there at night, maybe under a power transformer, try to pry off the concrete lid, dig it out. You're digging it out probably with a family of black widow spiders. So think about automated gas valves too. Also, just maintenance. This was a walk around I was doing for somebody. They had all this stuff around their meter, and when we pulled it away, and a lot of times there's vegetation overgrown, so you couldn't get to it, if you needed to. But look at the corrosion on there, right? So you start putting that under 2 minutes of shaking, what do you think is going to happen? So, simple call to the gas company, and they can take care of some of these things, depending on which side of the meter it's on. But the scenario for Los Angeles, there are multiple quakes that are possible. The San Andreas is extremely ripe. We know things that were even possible to know 10 years ago, and it does look very, very serious and probably fairly soon. The brush here is about person height, so you can see how much the rocks can basically rise up out of the earth near the fault itself. Something that happened at the National Earthquake Conference was Tom Jordan, who just retired last month from the Southern California Earthquake Center. The Southern California Earthquake Center manages most of the earthquake science research funds in the United States, and so many of the researchers, so they're real up on the science. And I'll tell you something, scientists like to couch everything in what they know versus, saying things in colorful language. It would be, you have the 30% within 30-year kind of thing. These are just projections, these are just calculations, etc. A lot of wiggle room in the language. But I'll tell you, when Tom Jordan stood up at the National Earthquake Conference last year as a keynote opening speaker and deliberately chose in front of global media to use this kind of terminology about the San Andreas. The springs are wound very, very tight. It's locked, loaded, and ready to go. And there are other voices that are speaking out too, including this well-known geophysicist, the entire region being close to failure. Because I'll tell you, when that goes, we're going to see probably a 7.1 along the front side of the mountains as an aftershock to that, after we've already been through 2 minutes of shaking. Yes, sir?
I'm just curious, the guy that's retiring, where's he moving?
I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell. Yes?
You always mention 2 minutes of shaking. Is it, how do you calculate that 2 minutes?
The magnitude range is related to the length of the actual fracture. Northridge earthquake on January 17th of 1994, which was at that point the costliest natural disaster in US history, and it's been succeeded several times over now, but it only fractured about a 10-mile segment. What we're talking about is a rupture that's roughly 25 times that, probably starting from the south end of the Salton Sea, ripping up through the Cajon Pass, around the backside of the San Gabriel Mountains out to Palmdale. Now that's the study that started all the great shakeout work and so on that's been going on for the last 10 years, and which many of us have been heavily involved in. But that brings us to another piece, because Northridge, depending on where you were maybe 11 to 17 seconds of actual fracture going on underneath you. Now, things still move for a while until they settle down. But what will happen from Salton Sea up to around Palmdale, at the 2 minutes of shaking for this band in front of the mountains, it'll already be shaking for about a minute before it hits us, be with us for about 2 minutes, and about another minute as it goes on the rest of the way. So that's how that's calculated. But the thing is, I'm sure most of you have heard the name Dr. Lucy Jones. And she said something that the media has not grabbed onto that really grabbed me recently. Was quoted in an article talking about the possibility of a wall-to-wall where it would go beyond Palmdale up toward Northern California, at least as far as Paso Robles. Well, if it goes to Paso Robles, we're not talking 7.8 under the scenario. We raise it almost another, full half, because it turns it into an 8.2, which will again extend the duration of the shaking. So that's pretty serious, and this is what she just recently was quoted as saying. Okay, so it's almost month by month that things continue to look more like the people who know the most are more than a little bit serious. And so, the whole thing, there are 2 pieces to it. And both of these are places where I've spent my emphasis as a consultant. It's not about the stuff. We do need to have stuff. But you don't even know the right stuff you need until you do the plan. And if your plan doesn't include really looking specifically at what you have in terms of your buildings, the places you travel, your lifestyle factors and all that, you're not even going to get the life safety piece right. Those Southern California families, if they had even thought about earthquake safety, they would never have let someone sleep in front of a fireplace, even if they were in a rental, right? Sometimes you can just improve your risks by changing your behaviors, but you gotta think about it. You gotta find out what you don't know, because people just don't know what they don't know. Madam President.
We've got time for one. Okay, Ken and Rod, you guys duke it out. Who's going to ask the question?
What do you think the role of extraction has with extraction of fossil fuels out of the earth has to do with
The cause? Oh, so
because
is that
Oklahoma and those other places in Midwest Kansas. They're doing a lot of fracking?
Yes, there are USGS studies now indicating, particularly in some of the places where activity has risen. In Oklahoma, in particular, was where the study started, but it's spread, where fracking, what's known as fracking, is actually contributing to earthquakes and rise in earthquake risk. They're considered human-induced earthquakes. When it first started, it was related to the injection of the wastewater, not the whole process, but the research is emerging that it's related to the whole process, not just the injection. Injection raises the risk, but the whole process contributes.
Okay, before you go, April, I just want to give you, this is a gift from our club. Thank you very, our theme this year is good as the new cool. And that basically represents the fact that everything we do actually impacts not only the situation you're in, but across the globe. And so this is a bracelet that was made by a woman across the globe trying to get her family out of poverty. And so the fact that you are here today kind of scared us all straight, but we're inspired, we're doing things, and then you've also made a difference to someone else's life. Thank you.
Thank you.